Let's talk about another tool that we can use to help solve equations. We can use multiplication or division to help solve. If we divide or multiply both sides of an equation by the same number, then it's still true, and we can proceed. Let's take a look at another example that I've written here for you. 6x equals 20. I'm going to use division in this case to isolate my x and thereby solve the equation. I divide both sides of this equation by 6. 6x divided by 6 equals 20 divided by 6. 6x divided by 6 is just x. 20 divided by 6 is 3.333. Now I've solved for x and have a final answer of 3.333 because I was dividing both sides of my initial equation by 6. Now it's not just numbers that we can multiply or divide both sides of an equation by. We can multiply or divide both sides of our equation by the missing variable as well. Let's take a look at another equation here and solve it together. I've written here for you the equation 4 equals 28 divided by z. Now, z is in the denominator on one side of the equation. We can multiply both sides of the equation by z, and in doing so, we're getting closer to simplifying and getting a final answer. I multiply both sides of this by z, and I now have 4 times z equals 28 divided by z times z. We have z in both the numerator and the denominator on the right side of this equation now. We can cancel this expression for z and that leaves us with 28 on the right side of the equation. Z divided by z is 1. So when we cancel, all we're really doing is putting the number 1 in place of z over z as multiplication. And that leaves us with just 28 in this case. Now I have for you 4z equals 28. And we can use the rule about dividing or multiplying both sides by the same number in order to proceed again. 4z equals 28. Divide both sides of this equation by 4. We're left with 4z divided by 4 equals 28 divided by 4. 4z over 4 is z, and 28 over 4 is 7. The final answer to this equation is that z equals 7. One typical math convention, just as a side note here for you, is to use letters from the end of the alphabet to stand for missing variables. In fact, the letter X is probably the one that gets used most often in algebraic equations like this, when it's standing for a missing variable. Sometimes they use Y or Z or W as well, and that's the convention. When you see letters from the beginning of the alphabet, they're usually in place of numerical constants. They're there to represent numbers that we don't have at the moment, but that we could have or plug in very easily. All right, let's combine the addition and subtraction techniques